Very cool. And so the word says, we are now recording. My name is Cameron Finch, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so thrilled to introduce you to today's event with Richard A. Jones reading from Footnotes for the New Universe, which released April 1st. Nathaniel Terrell reading from Is There Not a Cause, released on April 7th. Cristina J. Baptista reading from Taking Her Back, which released on July 20th. And Kate March reading from Thirst of Pisces, which is forthcoming the 21st of August. Just a quick note, the poet Madeline Farber was also scheduled to read with us, but unfortunately she was unable to attend. She's okay, and we will miss her. Her book, Less on That Later, was published on July 10th. All 5 titles, including Madeline's, can be pre-ordered or purchased through your local bookstores and online via IndieBound, Book Depository, Barnes & Noble, and that little place called Amazon. And of course, the books can be ordered on Atmosphere Press's website at atmospherepress.com/books. We've also put the links in the chat, and I hope you get a chance to take a look and purchase all of them because they're all wonderful. The reading will conclude with time for your questions. At that time, if you have a question for our authors, go ahead and type it in the chat and we'll make sure that it gets asked. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Richard, Kate, Chris, and Nate tonight. You are in for a treat. We at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we'd love to read it too. So feel free to submit your work to us at books@atmospherepress.com. During the reading, we'll keep you muted to keep extraneous sound at a minimum. And after all of our readers have read at the very end, we'll all be able to cheer and clap. In the meantime, please do feel free to use that chat for praise and yays and comments. So let's get to it. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first reader of the night, Richard A. Jones. Richard A. Jones is an African-American philosopher, writer, and educator who grew up in Washington, D.C. and Detroit. He holds a PhD in philosophy from the University of Colorado and concluded his teaching career at Howard University. Jones has published philosophical essays in Journal of Black Studies and Radical Philosophy Review. A prolific poet, his latest of 7 poetry volumes is Footnotes for a New Universe. His poetry and fiction have also appeared in Scientific American in the May 2021 issue, New Letters, and other literary publications. His first novel, Blackland, is forthcoming, also from Atmosphere Press, on August 6th. I'll be sharing my screen so you can see Richard's words as you hear them aloud. So without further delay, I give you Richard A. Jones. Richard, the virtual podium is yours.
Yes, good evening, and I'm so pleased that you're all here to hear my reading. I'd like to thank Cami and Nick and Kyle at Atmosphere Press. And I'd also like to thank family, friends, neighbors, comrades who are in attendance. I'd also like to give a shout out to Nate and Catherine and Kate, and let them know that I bought their books today. I ordered them from Bookshop, and I'm looking forward to reading them after I hear the presentations tonight. The genesis of my book, Footnotes for a Universe, came out of a poem that was published in the May issue of Scientific American. And so these poems were tailored for readers of Scientific American. They tend to be highly mathematical, scientific, and they're not for everyone's taste, I realize. But intertwined in these poems are my musing about race, that is, being an African American living in America, my musings about astronomy and cosmology, that is my lifelong love for astronomy, and finally, musings about my advancing age and living as I approach 80 years old, how life has changed for me and how meaning and values have been altered in my long life. I invited about 25 people to hear this reading, and they include some of the finest, most sensitive, intelligent, kind people that I have met in my 76 years on this planet. I'd also like to say one more thing, and that is I will read the poems, and I might pause in the middle of a poem to make a little side comment or something, but you'll have the poem as it appears on the page. And so with that, I'd like to start with a poem about cosmology, and it's entitled "Learned My Cosmology." Learn my cosmology at the kitchen sink, busting suds, watching the dishwater swirl in bubble spiral galaxies and down the drain. In black hole spins, bubble universes dispersing, streaming from the faucet, vortexing, slowly foaming. Elliptical galactic globules in an evolutionary display of inflationary bubbles popping and dishes finish, and washing my hands of it all, and then stirring milk into black coffee with perfect SA to SBC galactic discs whirling and slowing on the surface. The tuning fork from a spoon slowing down to elliptical galactosynthesis at the sink, beneath the fragrant pink Hoya plant's perfect star-clustered florets, and see from this homely phylomorphology that cosmology and reality's design began in God's mind and wishes as she washed her morning dishes. The word phylomorphology is from philosophy. It is a word that means love of form. And I'm often taken in my day-to-day life, how nature repeats her forms. In a galaxy, you see two perfect logarithmic spirals intertwined. In stirring your coffee with a little cream, as the coffee begins to slow down, you see the swirl of a galaxy. It's almost perfect. It's a perfect repetition. It's a way that nature shows herself to you repeatedly in using the same forms. It's a fractal reality we live in. Okay, the next poem, which is a little more playful and ludic, it's a true story, and I am the victim. I am the victim. One of my favorite musicians is John Coltrane, the great Black alto saxophonist. One of his great songs, great albums, is A Love Supreme. And believe me, in this universe, love is supreme. But this happened to me a few years ago. I couldn't find the John on a Coltrane. A welter of Joycean punnery, Coltrane at Finnegan's wake. It was not fun to me when failing, excuse me, I have to change pages here. Let me start over. A welter of Joycean punnery, Coltrane at Finnegan's wake. It was not fun to me when failing to find a place to pee on the MBTA from Boston to Air MA on a cold February day on a Friday and wee-weed in my pants, panting as I ran from one car to another like John Coltrane, looking for John too late on his alto sax. Do-da, 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 my favorite thing. The restroom on the train from Boston, then avoiding the eyes of the other passengers with a dark stain spreading like the umbra of an eclipse, everyone knowing what had happened, but avoiding my alto saxophone key eyes, do-da, do-da, like the cat in an accident with a bicycle. As my friend Mahone described Coltrane's music, it sounds like a cat and a bicycle colliding, and it's screeching and cawing and crying. John Coltrane, who hid a smile because of his bad teeth and sauntered off the train with my head held higher than Charles Bird Parker with a fresh spike hole, as serious as your life. This music is not funny, it's serious. As serious as your life. Playing out his blue notes in a head I could not find. So I laughed at myself in my advancing age, trying to find, as you know, on the trains, if you've ever been in Massachusetts, they don't have a restroom in every car. And I'm running from car to car, trying to find the train. And in my advanced stage, could not hold it, could not find the John on a cold train from Boston to Air, Massachusetts. This last poem is, if you look at the cover of the book, you'll see that it has a title that is a circle. And the circle is around a globular star cluster. It's globular star cluster in GC, New Galactic Catalog, or New Com Catalog for Stellar Objects, and it's number 6388. It's a Hubble photograph. And in this Hubble photograph, you have a picture of a globular star cluster. There are hundreds of thousands of stars in this cluster. There are approximately 250 of them that orbit our galaxy, orbit the Milky Way. They go around and around the galaxy like electrons around an atom. Again, phylomorphology, nature repeating her forms. And these globular star clusters with hundreds of thousands of stars are objects in a universe that we share, and I am totally awed by them, and awed by you, and awed by Zooming here on this Friday afternoon, awed by everything in my old age, but I'm particularly awed and moved by my grandchildren. As you get older, one begins to find, when I was a young man, somebody once told me, your children are your poems. Your children are your poetry. Don't worry about what words appear on the page. Look at your children. That's your poetry. Lindsay, you're my poem. But as I age, as I get even older, I have begun to discern that my grandchildren are the poems that are produced from my poetry. They are the ones. So I'll read this last poem. I don't want to take too long. I want to leave room for the other poets. What I've learned from my grandchildren. The great African-American philosopher, sociologist, and many people don't know it, but he was a prolific novelist. He wrote some very great novels. What I've learned from my grandchildren. And Du Bois said, children learn more from what you are than what you teach. What you are, not what you say. We're not here to teach them how to eat green beans and broccoli. We're not here to improve their table manners as grandparents. What we're here to teach them is who we are, so that they will better know who they are. I am tempted to say nothing, what I learned from my grandchildren, but that wouldn't be quite right. Like saying, Let them be children before they are men, says something. Or Sam Levinson's, they have a common enemy, their parents, and in us, their grandparents, their parents' authority undermined by cookies and desserts after every meal and in between. And thrice is the charm, as I've learned from them that going through childhood 3 times helps you get it right. My own childhood, my children's childhood, now theirs. I've learned that DNA is a treacherous snake, bringing back the dead in its helixed fangs. Chinese ancestor worship, I've been informed by a precocious 4-year-old, Momo, that when I'm big, he is small. And when he is big, I'll be small. And that when I am no more, his child will be me. And that 100 years is a very short time. And I've known them and their mothers and their grandmothers and their grandmothers' mothers, and in 70 short years, seen 5 generations, and that a long time ago is not really that remote. So people have really done many things in a brief period, as 1,000 years is but a diaper change between relearning my ABCs and Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or relearning to laugh at ridiculous cartoons or videos, as they call them now, and remembering how to read to them aloud with different voices for the bunnies and the kitties, or building towering nothings with Lego blocks. Without boredom. And yet mostly I've learned to love and forgive, because children are neither small adults nor a separate species. And as Rousseau, Jean-Jacques the philosopher, insisted on their playing outside, and he said famously, let nature be their teacher. And I'm down with them, as nature is still my own teacher. Yet I also agree with Dostoevsky's, the soul is healed by being with children. And my grandchildren transubstantiated in the suffering of Ivan's little girl, tortured by the world. Read the brothers Karamazov and the discussion between Ivan and Alyosha about the suffering of the little girl. And how many fuzzy bunnies and little kitties and fluttering butterflies and glittering rainbows will it take to fill the universe? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. It was beautiful. Thank you. And it's to a different dimension being able to read along with you. So thanks. Our next reader of the night is Nathaniel Terrell, whose debut collection, Is There Not a Cause, celebrated its book birthday on April 7th, right in the middle of National Poetry Month. Nathaniel resides in Western New York, and he is an independent author, published poet and writer, and aspiring artist. Currently, he is promoting a collection of poems titled Is There Not a Cause, published by Atmosphere Press. Other of his works have been in publications and online platforms, including New Plains Review, Maudlin House, Oddball Magazine, Finding the Birds, Connecting Perspectives, Open Mic Night Poetry Podcast, LifeWriting.com, The Inside Interviews, You Hyped Radio, Salmon Creek Journal, The Blunt Space, and more. Wow, that's so many, Nate. The virtual podium is now yours. Oh, where are you? I've got to find you. There you are.
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be taking part of this. This is my first time doing a group reading, so I'm really excited, and this is very special to me. I'm going to get right to it. Is There Not a Cause? This book was written over a span of 6 years, so there's a lot of highs and lows. a lot of me changing as the world was changing. It was a lot going on. So I tried my best to pick out a few poems, excuse me, that showed the change, the road and everything that I was going through in that time. So I'm going to start with the foreword, and hopefully that sets the tone of how this goes. The superstorm has come and gone. The devastation was massive and almost fatal. However, the waters have receded and the destructive winds are gone. The incredible damage has been done. Now, I stare at the broken fragments of my life, and in this immense aftermath, like any aftermath, a man can either move on or he can stand firm and rebuild. I chose to rebuild. So much was taken away. Fortunately, I was left with all that I need. God is great. This world is nuts. Now the time is. And that brings me to the next piece, which is Long Shot. And basically, this was me growing and trying to express some of the inner feelings I was going through as I was viewing what was going on around the world, some of the issues. So this one is called Long Shot. I can't smoke it away. I can't drink it away. It reaches me even in my sleep. The fury in my chest scorches like lava. I find it difficult to breathe. My heart is beating like a war drum. I feel lightheaded, but I won't panic. I close my eyes and slowly slip far away from the noise and anger to a place where I can think, strategize, and focus. Clinging to hope, in this moment, it is here that I take a long shot through the darkness. A surplus of emotions create a perfect storm, a deadly storm, the quiet storm. I feel everything, and at the same time, I feel nothing. Heaven help us all. Racism, intolerance, and bigotry are alive and well. Ignorance and hate have platforms that speak to a large audience. Domestic terrorist shooters target mass innocent, unassuming bodies. We are tormented by radical extremists, COVID-19, chemical warfare, sexual misconduct, exploitation, and rape. Horrifying natural disasters and undetected bombs unleash atrocious devastation to crowded metro centers around the world. Heaven help us all. Self-hate multiplies and divides my people further. The call for immigration reform is loud and echoing. While lies are well told and souls are being sold, a true house of God can't serve as a cover-up for a den of thieves. I won't dance and celebrate while my brothers are in need. Many perform in the pulpit, but how many will preach in the streets? I fight against myself daily. I feel lost, but I know my breakthrough is within reach. Heaven help us all. Family over everything. I struggle to be a better man, no longer the man I was, and not yet the man I will be. Throughout this journey, I balance passion, pain, purpose, premonition, and prayer. Happiness starts within. Every new day is a blessing. The process will never be sweet. However, here I stand. I speak life. I will rise above failure. I will succeed beyond adversity. Father, forgive us. Heaven help us all. The next piece I'm going to read is called Reflection, and it's one of the older poems in this book. And this piece is important because it was at a point where I felt like no matter what I did, I was doing the wrong thing. I was living wrong, around the wrong people, had the wrong attitude. I was just in a very dark place. And I thank God that I'm not there, but it's important to show my progression in these last 6 years in writing this manuscript. Sorry, I have to find it. Bear with me one moment. Reflection. I'm damned if I do, but I'll die if I don't. I'm such a magnet to the things that hurt me the most. I sense she's far away as we lay so close. I keep scriptures in my head. I talk to God when I smoke. There's no rest for the wicked. There's no light in this cave. My thoughts attack my spirit, for my thoughts are depraved. What I knew of love got me stabbed in the heart. Holding everything together was ripping me apart. To live is to suffer. Peace is hard to maintain. The king of the jungle only fears fire or a cage. Hatred spreads like property grass and division grows. Doubt has overwhelmed me and it has me by my throat. I can feel the heat rising. I'm ready to explode. I'm damned if I do, but I'm dead if I don't. Moving right along to the next piece, Outsider. And this was written, I think it was the beginning of 2016 I wrote this. And it was about when I realized everything that had happened. I was growing, I was looking at what was behind me and I had a choice to make. I could either lie down or I could keep going. And you'll get what my choice was after I read this piece, Outsider. And it hit deep in my soul like a mid-90s R&B love song. And being raised old school, I am extremely out of my element. As I convey the carnage all around me, I am pained to realize that the beautiful plan I concocted has gone horribly awry. I wish I had the tears to weep without restraint, because it is apparent that life as I know it will never be the same again. And in these fleeting last moments that I live as the man I have always been, before I am forced to adapt to the harsh reality that I alone created with my cursed reckless ambition, and at the very least become a scavenger, I humble myself and strip naked out of my ego and pride, lest I succumb to the dreaded situation and perish. I became victim to the lust of my eyes and flesh, and to be honest, my vanity has entrapped me. I pray to God for the fortitude, endurance, and wit to turn this awful predicament into a rewarding process where I rise above the shadow of death to levitate over the flames of disaster, failure, and defeat, and ascend through a stratosphere few have breached. I have one more, and this is the last one, and this is the title piece for the book, Is There Not a Cause? And I want to say the title, Is There Not a Cause, was taken from the Bible. This is one of the last things King David said before he went out and slew Goliath and cut off his head. So that's what the inspiration for this book was, from King David. The power of life and death lies in the tongue. For many, it's harder to get a job than it is to get a gun. If you're standing on the edge, think hard before you jump. They call us toxic males to make future generations of chumps. We will never have unity until we stand as one. Woe to the man that blatantly kills for fun. Are we in the last days? Has the great tribulation begun? Is there not a cause? A new world order is being constructed with an agenda of evil, perversion, and destruction. Change is trapped in red tape, lies, and corruption. Now is the time to assemble instead of standing reluctant. Do you remember when that dentist killed Cecil the lion and much of the world wanted to hang that man? Yet to this day, there are no convictions in the murder of Sander Bland. Cells of upheaval germinate all over this land. We must come together, Lord, help us understand. Without you, we're lost and we don't stand a chance. God, deliver us from evil out of Satan's grasp. Is there not a cause? Where are all my friends? Where did my comrades go? I was forsaken by the one that vowed she loved me the most. Some seeds become trees, so watch the seeds that you sow. If they slaughter our babies, then the future can't grow. Search for the answers for all the things that you don't know. Don't be controlled by the media. Don't let the media persuade you to give up faith and hope. Is there not a cause? You must be a student before you can teach. Champions are made after they suffer defeat. If the bar is set high, then the fall is steep. Predators come to annihilate and devour the weak. Greed and jealousy make it seem like there will never be peace. War is everywhere, hatred runs deep. Is there not a cause? A racial divide is set to tear us apart. Intolerance, ignorance, and fear whip this country hard. How are we moving backwards when we've come so far? Brothers and sisters, we are leaders. When will we take charge? Work, watch, fight, and pray. We must stay on guard. Let us uphold the light so it shines through the dark. I ask you, is there not a cause? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate. You make me want to go out and do something right now. Thank you. Next in our poetry extravaganza is Cristina J. Baptista. Cristina J. Baptista is a Portuguese-American educator, writer, and author of the poetry collection, The Drowning Book, published by Finishing Line Press in 2017. In 2014, Mystic Seaport Museum selected Cristina to be a 38th Voyager, one of a few chosen people who sailed aboard the Charles W. Morgan, an 1841 wooden whale ship that is the last of its kind. During the voyage, she served as poet documenter of the immigrant whaling experience. Cristina holds a PhD in English from Fordham University and is a literature teacher at a private school in Connecticut. You can visit her at www.cristinajbaptista.com. For Cristina's reading, I'll also be sharing my screen so you can see Cristina's words as you hear them read aloud. So Cristina, the virtual stage is now yours.
Thanks, Cami. And thank you everyone who showed up on a Friday night on Zoom when I'm sure many of us are kind of zoomed out for the past 12 to 16 months. I think one of the benefits of being in this pandemic is at least we've been able to have so many poetry readings with authors who may not necessarily have been together in the same location if we weren't online. So as Cami mentioned, the collection from which I'll be reading, Taking Her Back, does stem from a project that I spent about a year working on from 2014 to 2015 that involved sending the world's oldest and last remaining wooden whale ship, the Charles W. Morgan, which is originally from New Bedford, Massachusetts, where I did some research and where I actually set loose on this voyage, and is now at Mystic Seaport permanently. And as was mentioned, there was this 38th voyage because it was the 38th time it was set at sea since 1841. And there were a variety of people on this ship, from corset makers replicating whalebone corsets, to scrimshars, to musicians, to essayists, to people like myself, onboard poets. So in particular, I'm tapping into my personal Portuguese heritage, but what fascinates me also as an English teacher and sort of a history nut is that whaling is America's first, and at the time, the 19th century, only equal opportunities employer. So it employed white, Black, Native American, white, native-born Americans, immigrants, and it was a motley crew. So a part of that features into some of these poems. If you take a look at my collection, which looks like this, you'll see that I actually dedicated it to the ship because it wouldn't have happened without that ship. And there are three portions: mizzenmast, mainmast, and foremast, kind of looking back, kind of while I was on the voyage, and kind of looking forward. And I will be reading some selections from each of those sections today. So I'm going to start with a poem called Bellwethers, which is actually the first poem in Mizzenmast. Bellwethers. More than woman, a ship is the greatest temptation. Men clamber up the gangway, each with his own story, strapped snug to distant tongues, a cargo of tales worth their weight in stones. They were all atoms, but instead of a garden, a wilderness of waters. Instead of forked tongue speech of the serpent, it was the splitting syllables of a foreign language. She swathed their feet in brine, cleansed their flesh in beating sun, signaling off catherpins. They were brought forth to the ribs of the ship. What kind of god holds so many bones, a belly so strong and full? She shrouded and laid them in their berths like nesting dolls. She, an Eve of ribs, gifts and fruits of so many atoms' devotions. Despite their knowledge, the greatest fear loomed, forgetting a word in their own tongue. Who knows how many languages are stolen, kept beneath deck? How many speak of hope as if it is an alien thing? A whale ship is all things impossible, all water and fire, life or death. There is no in between. There is no comfort for the deviled, haloed men. People too have floating ribs. When do we become the things we do, the places we live? A whaleman is an incurable insomniac, looking for a gate out of this wilderness, all the time knowing better. The way of getting around a whale ship is simple. Stay where you are until told otherwise. Every voyage is a traipsing towards sticks, the shaking hands with Karen, humming to dissipate fear, chanties to say, we are coming. This ship is ribbed and heaving, transporting to all who dare to climb. In the closing up, in the spaces of oakum and ash, some wounds never heal, others too well. Still here, the single eve, to tempt with the cupping figure of a heaving wooden body, the tapered edge of a bowsprit, a convincing, luring finger. Okay, so I'm going to read next a poem called Writing Home. And this, as you can see on the screen, is based upon the predominant illiteracy of the Portuguese whalemen. Writing Home. The shoulders are the first to tell you your work is done, or your work is not done. When the stagger is caught in mid-rise because the wind plays tricks, even though the sun is brighter than a Madonna, the arms and muscles just above the blades of narrow bone, slim and angled, almost burned by sun, if only the skin was not such a swarth. That is the moment of reliance on how a body moves like a keel with so little leeway, yet so much power, plugged with wood, stuffed with wood, rocking with wood always. The stuff of a body is always a skeleton of nature, a true self, the listing beneath a weight almost too much to bear, almost too familiar. At night, you roll the joints, rub the shoulders. You light a candle, the remains really. You read the signals and ashen curls, parenthetical fragments filling a blank page against a painted wall. Then, stretching a hand, you reach for the paper and become a liar. Here, in half dark, sitting in the broken belly, you pretend for a moment that you can write home. Okay, so those two are from the first third of this collection. And then the next poem, 38 Ways to Rename a Whale Ship, is from the middle portion. And there's 38 ways because I was thinking of the 38 different voyages of the Charles W. Morgan. And just going to put it out there now, if I forget to read a number aloud, I apologize. For some reason, my mind skips right over it, but I'm gonna do the best I can. 38 ways to rename a whale ship. 1, bobbing basket of nature's bounty. 2, holy relic, Moses among the bulrushes. 3, the yield of an ancient forest. And 4, burial of 3,000 whales. 5, a flotation device saving drowning men. Or 6, sheaves and pages of 1,000 stories of drownings. 7, ribs of men and beast and boats and bodies. 8, defiance of words, siren of kennings. 9, storehouse of memory. 10, tempter of fate and runaways. 11, hoarder of oil and blood. 12, a body of bodies. 13, our past, our present, our what will be. 14, voyager. 15, seer of corners no hands have touched. And 16, holder of eyes no sight can't touch. 17, the lucky one. 18, dreamer. 19, hoarder of dreams. 20, cutting tongue of ocean and language. 21, cleaver, tearing and drawing together. 22, a final temptation. 23, memory maker. 24, foreseer of everything all at once, but says nothing. 25, flyer, like the monarch butterfly seeking Atlantic islands. 26, a foreigner in many ports. 27, the last resort for anathemas. 28, place where many things are named after animals. 29, place where many things are named after body parts. 30, place where languages find a new babble, blend all sounds. 31, open arms and sundry curved limbs beckoning. 32, a hesitance cleared with a gentle cough. 33, dancer on the wind. 34, drifter of waters. 35, the remembered. 36, groaning artifact, avuncular vessel. 37, this returner of the living, now 38, another Lazarus. And just as a note, the lucky one is the actual nickname of the Charles W. Morgan, because she persists when all the other whale ships have not. So I'm going to read just a couple more from the last third, and the next poem is called Connectivity. And you'll see I start with an epigraph from a quotation from Sarah Delano, former president of the New Bedford, Massachusetts Waterfront Historic Area League, or WHALE, coincidentally and nicely said there. And she had written, and this is something I found when I was doing research at the New Bedford Whaling Museum and their archives, something that really struck with me. She said, if you bulldoze your heritage, you become just anywhere. Connectivity. My father may as well have been a whaleman. In the 1970s, he fled continental Portugal, home, the draft, just as 100 years before, islanders climbed aboard whale ships to escape conscription. What is the greater war, on land or sea, both a kind of tussle with the self? When I write, I have to accumulate connotations and live with the surplus, the storage. A sail billows sends me to summer when mother shook sheets from the backyard clothesline, and for that precious moment, white cotton would swell, and I'd imagine sky was an over ocean, and the grass was a watery leak, and I'd be floating, not standing, on a shifting world. Female Tantalus, caught between necessities and desires forever out of reach. Every myth is about a low-hanging fruit. Every mythic man is half god and half mortal. Everything is a poised figure caught between winds. The wailing spears arranged like Ma's crochet hooks broke me. Her fingers moved nimbly, darting, eyes unmoved from the loops. She never had the patience to show me how. She'd hold her arms open like yards, as easy to bend and comfort. Instead, Papa taught me how to braid, how to loom, how to weave blankets by hand like his mother, how to coil ropes. I twisted my elbows around the lengths of manila and yellow synthetic fibers. I stretched my joints and limits, testing nature and her containment. All this time, he was preparing me for a voyage I never knew I'd take. Then, imagine, comparing my ear to a conch shell led me to my father's language, again, and Portuguese etymology of the word concha, the meat and salads, the sea. How much of who we are depends on the shadows and the people we put there. I know of tongues that rustle out from sheets of plank wood or tear through rigging like a bird shot from a clear sky. How much is our language a fusion, a fixing of past and present forged in some fiendish blaze we couldn't face? Caught in a net of words, a gathering of tribes and totems, there I was, another navigator like my ancestors and theirs, in such a strong, hooked line before them. And then I will read one more, which is actually the final poem in the collection. It is, and if anyone buys my collection, thank you in advance. If you have, or if you will, you'll notice I do use a lot of footnotes, typically explaining the meaning of a Portuguese word or an allusion to Moby Dick or mythology or whatever it may be. But you may notice that there's no footnote for saudade because there's no exact equivalent from Portuguese to English, but it's like an overwhelming nostalgia or longing, deeper than nostalgia. So saudade. It must be lonely, being the last of your kind, just as the foreign men were lonely on your planks when you felt so surrounded by life, by wind, by blood and water that scrubbed your deck and seasoned it. Now things are so different, but the sons and daughters of your original companions walk the gangway, climb the rigging, fly aloft, stroke your ceiling, and curl in your bunks, their forms, commas, and parentheses, addendums to history. How the world has returned to you through inheritance. It is why we're all here, still listening to wind run through canvas flashes and whipped tails of manila rope. It's why we let the smell of tar and oak lurk just a little longer, inhaling deep, lurid juices and nostalgia. My people call it saudade. I call it coming home. And that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cristina. Last and certainly not least is Kate March. Kate March is an American poet, performer, choreographer, and painter. An internationally acclaimed artist, her multidisciplinary creative expressions have been praised as visionary, provocative, feminist, and emotionally courageous. After living in London for 2 years, Hong Kong for 6 years, and traveling the world extensively throughout that time, Kate now resides back home in America with her loving husband, Paul, and small but mighty rescue dog, Beulah. In June 2021, she began her most adventurous chapter yet with the birth of their first child. You can find out more about Kate and her journey by checking out her website, www.katemarch.com, and following her on Instagram at @IAM_Kate March. Kate, take it away.
Hello, thank you so much, Cami. And I just want to say thank you to Atmosphere Press for having us all here tonight. It's been wonderful to hear everyone's words and see the words in some cases. And I'm just really happy to be here. I'm also very happy that my 6-week-old son is sleeping right now, so that he's given me the opportunity to be here with you. So thank you, Sim. So this book, Thirst of Pisces, I have it in my hands right here, is a collection of poetry that I've written over the course of about 12 years. I didn't really think it was going to be a book ultimately. I just kept writing, and I wrote these poems all over the world. I, as mentioned, lived in London, lived in Hong Kong, and throughout my performance work, I've been able to be all over the world, which has been a true privilege. And in this book, I do acknowledge the place that the poem was written, and I'll also share that with you this evening. And something that the book itself doesn't actually say, but I'll say it to you guys this evening if you do happen to pick up the book, is that it's actually written in chronological, or it's in chronological order, the book. Originally I had the dates, but Atmosphere Press helped me edit those out, and I think it makes for a nice kind of secret to the readers like yourselves. So I'm just going to get into it. And the book is broken up into 3 sections. The dawning, surrender. The next one is the flow, movements. And the final one is the stillness, disruptions. I'll do a selection of poems from each. I'll start from the section, the dawning. And the first poem I'll read is called In Place of Blood, There Was Ice. And this was written in Iceland. In place of blood, baby blue ice. In place of freckled flesh, the blackest of sand. In place of a warm embrace, the north wind. In place of mouths and eyes, peaks and caves. In place of me, vast, wild horizon. In place of you, distant emerald seas. In place of us, the universe. In place of nothing, everything. In place of ending, everlasting. So that was inspired actually by a hike I did on a glacier. And I felt like the glacier was just this living creature. And it was such a unique experience to be kind of having these you kind of have to aggressively step on this glacier to make your way up and through. And it just was a very poetic and lyrical experience for me. And that poem just brings it really right back, which is the intention of a lot of these poems, to transport people that may or may not have been able to travel to some of these places. Sometimes it evokes a sense of the place itself, and sometimes it's an emotion or an experience that I had in that place. I'll go on to the second section, the flow. And the first poem we'll do there is kind of a short one. It's called Spring Blossoms, and I wrote it in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, where I've been a few times now. And it's just such a exuberant place. And I went there in the spring in this particular case when I wrote this poem. Spring blossoms, fragrant, reminiscent of the love we used to share. Spring blossoms, ripe, pretty for plucking, or like us, ready to fall. I'll read another one from that section. It's in Peking, and this is written in Beijing. Red lipstick, red nail polish, red cheeks, red shoes, red roses, red, red, red. Red chopsticks, red book, red pipe, red lantern, red sunset, red, red, red. Red scarf, red bag, red meat, red hat, red heart, red, red, red. Red chairs, red light, red bicycle, red envelope, red throat, red, red, red. Red ink, red stamp, red hands, red flag, red blood, red, red. Let's see. Another poem from this section called Sour Stomach, Sweet Memory. I think this was, I don't know if it was yours, Cami. I think it was one of the editor's favorite, one of her favorites. And this was written in Cambodia, in Angkor Wat. You are the other side of infinity. I know the color of your eyes better than anyone you will ever meet. You are the head to my tail. I know the flavor of your soul. It's a taste acquired by few, by me. We leave each other undone and understood. And I'll do the final one from this section. This one is called Opening Night, and this was in Kennedy Town, which is in Hong Kong. I lived in Hong Kong for 6 years, near and dear to my heart. And as Cami mentioned, I first and foremost am really a performance artist and performer and director as well. And this was after I had produced a play, and it was a lot of, everything's a lot of work when you're putting on a piece that has multiple actresses, actors, dancers. It was a really big production, and it was kind of a poem written afterwards, after opening night, and the exasperation and the joy and all of it. After all the emotions, all the writing, all the stories, all the messages, all the bullshit, all the anxiety, all the insomnia, all the struggles with self-worth, all the battlefields, all the fucking, all the heartache, all the loneliness, all the victories, after all the rainbows, all the storms, all the long walks, all the flights, all the turbulence, all the laughter, all the wine, all the tears, after all the poetry, all the benches, all the sunsets, all the dancing, all of me, all of me. After all of my voice, all of my full heart, all of my empty heart, all of my blood, all of my sweat, all of my sunshine, after all of it, I am. I'll go to the last section. I'm just reading my notes for where the page numbers are. There's about 90 pages of poetry in this collection. And again, this last section is called The Stillness, Disruptions. And a lot of this section was actually written when I came back to America, which was really a big culture shock for me. I'd been living abroad for a while, and coming back was a big transition. And I'd also been dealing a lot more, even though I'd been dealing with my whole life, with endometriosis, which is a really painful disease that affects a lot of women. And it just, as a dancer, as a performer, it really kind of took a major focus in that transition physically. And so a lot of the poetry in this last section has to deal with that, and also within that work, also the transitions of being home in America after cultivating home in so many other places. And towards the end of this collection, actually COVID hit. So there's a few poems from there as well. So this first one is called Humane Rays of a Painless Dawn, written in Brooklyn. Darkness grew inside of me, a black web of scathing scars attaching quite aptly to my livelihood, to my womanhood, dangerously, destructively, a venomous creature pulling my body down, way down, into an abyss I feared had no exit sign. Darkness thrived inside of me. Without logic, this gruesome thing wove a warpath, leaving not a trace of light or peace. Further we fell, my body and my spirit, fearful and entangled in a bloody mess, enduring an open-ended chapter of grueling soreness. Darkness survived inside of me. I can't recall a time when it didn't take my breath away, toss my hope away, push me over the edge. It spoon-fed me shame and distress, hoping I would be too full up to disturb the comfort of our anti-symbiotic duress. Then darkness died, finally. One sunny spring day, it wasn't an easy downfall. In its absence, I woke up slowly, groggy and perplexed, a temporary fog, the welcome successor, replacing sadness, bitterness, and angry clenched fists. When the murk subsided, a crystal clarity and poignant power birthed a deep wisdom for survival. I felt unburdened and lighter. We rose, body and soul, from that abominable abyss, like twin phoenix birds, free and floating, back into the humane rays of a painless dawn. And I will do two more for you. This one is Seed, Bloom, and Decay. And it was written in Sedona, Arizona, which is one of my favorite places in the entire world. If you haven't been there, it's one of those places you see that has the really strong, vivid red rocks, and it's considered quite a spiritual place. I witness the bittersweetness of the cherry blossom's descent from limb to ground, and I believe I am the cherry blossom, in seed, in bloom, in decay. I believe too, we are autumn's leaves, we are winter's snow, enduring states of change, flowering fully, accepting transformation, falling gracefully from high heights. All right, I lied, I have two more. They're short. I wanted to do one that was based in Tokyo in honor of the Olympics. This is called The Taxi Driver. I arrive at the train station in the blitz of a rampant rush hour. 3 heavy bags, jet lag, jello legs, no cell service, post-honeymoon glow, desperate to be horizontal. Welcome to Tokyo. I follow arrows and instinct, searching for the way out without any signs of my native tongue, a dizzying odyssey of long corridors and stairways, winding me up, over, around, and down, yielding to construction sites and homeward bound bodies. Welcome to Tokyo. I yearn for sake, sushi, and slumber as I feel the city's lights come into focus. The air hits me and I gulp some personal space. Thankfully, some nice man senses my disorientation and guided me like my North Star towards the taxi queue. He brokenly whispers, "Welcome to Tokyo." I exhale, making it to the car with the gentle, kind elder with warm eyes, driving with gloves. He turns to face me, smiling. He speaks in Japanese, and after a pregnant pause and mutual confusion, we belly laugh together. I share the screenshot of the hotel name. 15 minutes passed. We just sat there, attempting clairvoyance, when finally, after more grins and some giddy giggling, he somehow deciphers my destination. And it is a holy moment. Alleluia, welcome to Tokyo. And I will end with this poem, Windows, written in Brooklyn. It's day 8 of IVF and day 7 of the stay-at-home policy for COVID-19. Imagine life without windows. Be grateful we can always let the light in, a bounty of beauty beyond the pain. And pain is P-A-N-E in that case. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Richard. That was wonderful to hear all the different kinds of poetry that can exist in this world. And Kate, I hope that you somehow turn your poems into dance. That would be amazing to see. At this time, we still have a few minutes left together. If anybody would like to ask a question of one or all poets, feel free to put it in the chat. Or I guess I can also just have us all unmute and we can all just speak candidly together, if that would be okay. You know, poets, give me a thumbs up or a, yeah, that seems cool. Oh, you guys are so awesome. All right, well, let's unmute everybody and let's first just give a big cheer to everyone.
Yay!
Right.
You really get a glimpse of the diversity of Atmosphere Press in and of itself, too, just listening to the four of us. Yet there's still this, I was just trying to think of like what's kind of connecting us, because that's the way my mind works, and I'm listening to other poets, and we're very much all kind of rooted in the body and how spaces or sites, like SITE, like how sites kind of inform the way our bodies act or react, or in Richard's case, betray us in some cases, right? So that was pretty fascinating, and yet very different styles.
Also thinking about time too, you know, like Richard's is sort of in space itself in all time, and Cristina, you're really taking us back, you know, to 18. What is it? 1841
to the 1920s, essentially.
And then, of course, Kate, you're documenting, you know, COVID, but also, you know, your journeys, and Nate, of course, you know, you're taking us back to the biblical times as well as, you know, 2016 and through your life as well. So we've really transcended the clock, I would say. If anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to, you know, say hello.
Well, I see one of my former students from Howard University, Andrew Watley.
Yeah.
I sat on Andrew's oral defense for his degree, where he was queried about his watch, that he loved his watch and he owned his watch. But what if somebody else wanted to take that watch away from him? What would he do? I remember very clearly. And Andrew was also my roommate in South Africa. We traveled to Cape Town and stood in Nelson Mandela's jail cell. And he is a good friend and a good man, and I have not seen him in 20 years. I've corresponded with him, but seeing him is a great treat. One thing about being a teacher is you never forget your students. You always remember them. And I remember Drew very fondly.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Andrew.
Good to see you too, Dr. Jones. And it certainly feels like 20 years, but it hasn't been that long. I think time is kind of dilated under the passage of this quarantine and COVID. So I've definitely lost track. Like, I feel like it's been, I don't even remember what life is like almost before this started. But yeah, I definitely think fondly of our trip to South Africa and, you know, how spiritually awakening it was, and just, you know, how it expanded my view as a young man, and how I want to share experiences like that with other young men in my family. I'm currently working with my nephew. He's not on camera, but he's in the house. And first, what I should do is apologize for my lateness. I was handling some personal business. I arrived midway through. I came in Nathaniel's poem, which was really good, by the way, Nathaniel. And, you know, it's great, you know, like, it just feels rejuvenating hearing people speak, you know, being in a creative atmosphere. It's been like, I've been deprived of that, not just from quarantine, but just ever since I came back home. It's just, it hasn't been the same as the East Coast. So this was very much a big treat, and I'm very grateful to be here. Yeah, so that's all I have to say.
Say a question or a thought or some epiphany you had from this brilliant reading, feel free to put it in the chat too. Sometimes I get a little shy on Zoom. Actually,
you know, many of the poems spoke to immigrant experiences, liminal experiences, that is, living across other borders, experiencing life in other places. And I wonder what Michael Balderi thinks. He is from, you know, when I first met Michael Balderi, we were playing baseball at Kent Denver, and he was probably in the 10th grade, 11th grade. But since then, Mike Balderi has, I don't know, expatriated himself to Japan. He lives in Japan. He has
that's right.
a Japanese wife and a son. And
that's right.
What are your feelings about the United States vis-a-vis Nate Terrell's ideas that racism and people killing each other, and what are your perspectives on the U.S. now that you don't live in the U.S. and race?
Putting me on the spot here, but yeah. The tables have turned, Mr. Jones. Yes, yeah, but actually, yeah, in Nate's poem, there was in one of the poems, one passage that did resonate with me was the line about something about, like, how are we moving backwards, right? I can't remember, Nate, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, but that is a kind of I guess feeling that I have looking at things from a distance. There,
moving backwards.
Well, I just feel like, why, how is all this, still happening? I mean, it's just so, and I'll tell, I mean, this is maybe not, this is not meant to compare light things with heavy things, but the other night I was watching just a documentary about the Beatles. And the Beatles, like it was one about their touring, like when they were touring in the US, and they were in a press conference, and in Florida, I think, or something, like they weren't gonna they were gonna have a segregated crowd or audience or something. And they were just asking the guys, the Beatles, like, well, what do you think about it? And basically, like, it was just very simple. I mean, like Paul McCartney just said, it's just stupid. I mean, why would we not play for any particular group of people, and that it's just, to me, and that, I mean, again, I know this sounds very facile and very silly, but that's kind of my feeling about race. Like, I don't really think about it, like, I know it's an issue. I mean, not to say that there aren't differences and so on, but I just don't understand why would I deny somebody something, or why would anybody deny me based on race, or think, I just don't see.
Is there not a cause?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah,
racism, I mean, is there not a cause?
Right, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, why, yeah, right? Like, it's just, I see it, but I just don't, like, I think we should be past that by now.
Yes,
right?
Yes, we should be. Yes.
And that I guess that's what I'm saying, is that it just seems that, and it is an issue. And so, and yeah, it's baffling to me, and it's to tell you the truth, I just think it's shameful, you know, to see that, but you know, that happening in the US and so many of the other issues that are happening now. And, you know, I mean, I guess things are gradually getting better, but there's always that, it's always there. There's always that undercurrent. So anyway, long answer. I'm sorry, yeah, to go on, but obviously a complex issue. But thank you, everybody, for sharing your work. It was very interesting for me. I don't attend these kinds of things. So yeah, it's very interesting for me to hear all those different voices. And actually, I don't know if we're running out of time, but I actually had a question for everybody, because I'm very curious about the process of writing poems now. I mean, you talk about things, I mean, because you are, you know, it's a relatively free medium and form, and yeah, like, I mean, any form of expression. But I was just curious about how you kind of formulate the structure or the sound, or is there something that you're, you know, influenced by, that you think, oh, well, that's the sound that I want, or, you know, because obviously poetry is, you know, very, very much connected with sound, you know, and in music, right, and lyricism. So I was kind of interested in that, like just the process of subject, you know, trying to express certain emotions or kind of formalize experience or things like that in any kind of poetic form, right? Like poetry.
Well, you know, I'll take a quick shot at it, but I hope
Yeah.
Cristina, Kate, and Nate will express their view on it. And to me, it starts with a feeling, and then the words seem to suggest themselves in groups that have some inner structure. And so I'm always looking for some kind of inner scheme. I don't count syllables. I don't count stresses. I write vers libre. I write blank verse, but there's still a rhythm to it. It is the rhythm of my thinking about the thing. The words are chosen carefully, edited. Often cross out words, take them out, throw them away. They don't work. But it is a tiring work. It is a labor, but it is a labor of love, because if you say it just right, it rings. It makes you know that you said it right, and you don't ever have to change it again.
Yeah. Thanks.
A lot of it is lyrical therapy for me. It's like it's me to express myself. A lot of it I can get it from watching a documentary. Like for an example, I was watching a documentary on Sam Cooke, Frank Sinatra, and I look at realizing, okay, what was going on there? Now a lot of it's what I'm feeling. Turning on the news, I'm watching, you know, like we were talking about, you know, not to go back, but you were talking about racism and stuff like that. I can't stand it on any level. So that's something that, you know what I mean, it drives me. A lot of it is just passion and just, you know, the need to express myself. And like Dr. Jones was saying, there's a rhythm a lot of time. There's a beat that I can't, you know, I just can't stop. And it's like, sometimes I'll start a beat and then I'll go back. I'm like, okay, I can't use this here. Let me sit on it. I'll sit on it for maybe a month, 2, 3. I'll start writing another piece. Oh, let me bring that other piece back. I mean, I've got notes and stuff all over the place. You know, it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah. And I like the way that, Nate, in your poems, you kind of use certain idioms or colloquialisms, and then kind of turn them around a little bit. And so there's that kind of repetition mix, because we often do. I mean, we tend to think in some of those aphorisms, or, you know, like, but it's interesting the way that's, it was integrated with your own kind of thought processes or stream of consciousness. So yeah, so I definitely see that part of the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just to jump in also, I totally agree with the rhythm and almost the movement of the words. And because I'm a dancer and choreographer, it's not only the sound having a rhythm, but it's actually the words on the paper having a pattern that jumps out at the reader or the audience. That's how I think of it. Not everyone will hear you or hear it. They will actually, they'll read it to themselves and hear their own voice. So it's trying to tap into someone else's rhythm as well. And it really is, for me, starting with the feeling and emotion that you have to try to put into words, because I also think that's the beauty of poetry. It's like this attempt to put something into words, which is why I also lend myself to dance and movement, because oftentimes we can't put things into words, but this poetry is this attempt to put these feelings and these complex experiences and thoughts and inklings into a rhythm that others might connect to. Yeah,
I think that's true. And in your work, there was the words were used in a very concise and economical fashion. I felt like trying to keep like those punches, right, of emotion in there, or movement or whatever. So yeah. See that.
Yeah, I think, like, to jump in there, for me, I mean, I'm like a constant collector of scraps, like some of you have been talking about. It's, the overheard conversation, it's the headline, it's, the snippet that you catch at the tail end of the news or whatever it may be. It's a social media post. And like in one of the poems I read today, I felt like I kept running into Portuguese history, and part of my dissertation also had to do with that. But like for one poem, I was writing about like a conch shell and like the shape of the ear like a conch shell, and then I was looking at the etymology of it, and I realized it was from the Portuguese word concha, and I'm like, I can't escape my roots, like it's everywhere. So that kind of just like these happy coincidences. For a collection like Taking Her Back, obviously it was being on the ship, and the way your body moved is much different. So kind of tapping into those physical locations, sounds. I actually, when I went to the New Bedford Whaling Museum, I was listening to recordings of what sperm whales sounded like. So I tried to put that into a metaphor. How do you explain a sound that not many people know, like in writing, that sort of thing? So it's like it's keeping the channel open for the divine to enter. I think I'm paraphrasing Ann Carson there, maybe. It's just letting anything kind of filter in, and you write it down, and if you don't use it for this collection, maybe it ends up somewhere else. But and I'm also, you mentioned like being economical. I don't think I'm the most economical writer, but I am a big fan of going back and like cutting out other articles, like the a, ands, and does just have to go, like get right to the image or the main word. And in this collection, I thought it was essential to be repetitive with some words, because if I'm tapping into immigrants who have a limited language, they shouldn't be philosophizing with, this really articulate language. So there are some poems that are intentionally kind of repetitive with words, or kind of repetitive themes that come up again and again, because you would imagine that, I'm thinking of Portuguese immigrants, but immigrants in general who are typically illiterate, they would have that limited vocabulary. So that was sort of an exercise in not being lofty, let's say, and trying to keep it, trying to tap into ghosts, let's say. And in a way, like being on an 1841 whale ship, like sleeping on an 1841 whale ship, like it feels like you're being haunted, but it's quite gorgeous. I mean, I went down to the belly of the ship at one point and put my ear to the wall and just listened to the water. And I kept thinking, if this water just charged in through this like slim, like it's on its original 1841 keel too. If the water just charged in, like we'd all just be dead, right? But yet we put our trust in this ship, and so many people did.
I just like to add in conclusion for myself, that it's about the beat of the drum. I mean, from the African drum, that there is this tradition in African-American poetry from Don L. Lee, Haki Madhubuti, if you know him, these poets, Black poets from the beginning. And so in being a poet, I feel like I'm carrying a torch. I am trying to continue the sound of the drum, the human heart beating, the beating of the drum before there were words. People have been trying to express themselves for hundreds of thousands of years. And the burden of poetry is to keep the feeling alive, keep the muse on your shoulder, to try to create beauty and joy, not just complain about all of the darkness, to try to create light, to bring some light to bear on the human experience. So
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to say, when you said economical, I think the space between the words or the things you leave out are just as important
yes.
as you leave in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like space in music, right? When you have, you know,
Pause.
talk about pauses. Yeah. But yeah, yeah, Cristina, yeah, I mean, just based on what you're saying, yeah, I mean, I do feel that, yeah, you're probably, you've been successful in achieving that range of voices. And that was something that, you know, when I was listening, I thought, yeah, this is interesting. I mean, using different modes or different forms, you know, even visually, you know, I think those help to, yeah, lend those, each poem a distinct kind of voice, like you're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Jones, I totally agree. Like, that's it, you know, like you're following that beat, you know. We're all just following that beat,
And to that,
like that's all we're doing in life, right?
And to that end, some of the
Yeah.
greatest poetry in the United States today is coming from rap musicians.
That's right.
I
Well,
mean, I listen to Jay-Z, the song of OJ. I listen to many of these rap artists, and the rhyme schemes, the creation, the beat, the feel of it, the sincerity. I mean, they're spitting the truth. They are telling the truth. It's in rhyme, it's in meter. It is politically profound, what they're saying. And so being a poet does not mean being an academic poet, writing for other academics. It does not mean, in many ways, we want to appeal to the people. We are part of the people that surround us. But I think in many ways, for African-American culture, rap music has taken poetry and elevated it to a different level.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that I mean, it's yeah, like hip hop music, but beyond that, even, you know, popular music, right? I mean, like even like Cristina, in your work, I mean, I listen to a lot of Brazilian, basically pop music, right? And although the Brazilians pronounce it saudade, right?
Every time I hear someone speaking Portuguese, I get excited, and then I realize, wait, it's Brazilian.
British English and American English, right?
Yeah.
Portuguese and Brazilian. But yeah, I mean, a lot, when you look at that is poetry as well, right? I mean, a lot of those lyrics, you know, that looking back, I mean, it's...
Or the Portuguese, like fado music, right?
Exactly, like, Amalia Rodriguez, or like just beautiful lyrics, right? And I feel like probably writing poetry now, you're influenced by this kind of, this aspect of popular culture, right?
Right.
You know? But I agree. I mean, like it is like, you know, some of the I agree. Yeah, Mr. Jones, that like, yeah, just listening to hip hop, it gives you that beat and that life and that experience with such immediacy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Without any BS, just like, you know, this is me, just, you know, that form of direct expression, right, is always been part of music. But yeah, I think that hip hop is the thing. I mean, that's the biggest innovation in popular music, you know, in the past 30 years or something. So, yeah.
Well, thanks.
Anyway, sorry.
Thanks, Michael, for that. I mean, your question just like exploded, and everybody to talk about such a diverse.
Very interesting. Yeah, thank you. So,
yeah.
So I kind of, yeah, you know,
For anybody else who might have a question, for our authors, check them out on their websites, on their social media. I'm sure that they'll be happy to answer your questions on other places in the internet too. Thank you so much, Richard, Cristina, Kate, and Nate. You guys are just, I feel like I just want to go like make things now.
I
And
always feel like going to write after I go to a reading, so that's what we want.
definitely. Thank you so much for your words and your brains and just your generosity and your time for being here tonight. And thank you everybody for sharing. Oh yeah, I see people clapping. Oh, thank you for being with us to celebrate all of these wonderful poets and authors. Don't forget that you can order Footnotes, Is There Not a Cause, Taking Her Back, and Thirst of Pisces from the links in the chat. Please also consider checking out all of the other atmospherepress.com releases, new and forthcoming. You can sign up for our email newsletter, and we'd love to hear that you were with us today. And that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend.
It was
Thank you.
Good to meet you, Cristina, Kate, and Nate.
Likewise.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Can't wait to read more of
Thank you,
your
everyone.
Yeah, pleasure to read with you.
I enjoyed your poems. I really enjoyed them.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you again. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.